Ahoy there, legendary listeners. You are listening to the Halo Effect podcast with Lauren Quellhurst, and we have the beautiful Joe Somodi. I hope I have pronounced that right. I didn't ask. We've got him on as our featured guest today, and he is a lifelong teacher, writer, speaker, and seeker. And the reason that I found Joe was that I was looking to people who had a similar background in yoga philosophy and teaching, and he's actually a certified ParaYoga Teacher Level 2 and a certified Vishoka Meditation instructor. So if all of those words sound gobbledygook, we will get into explaining those, or you can Google them for yourself. He is also has a huge background in video and in production in that area, and he was an actor back in the day, so he has a whole heap of random knowledge that I'm going to pick his brain about throughout the podcast. But something else that he recently mentioned to me, that he's currently writing his first fiction thriller book that will weave in the teachings of yoga. So I'm very, very curious to hear all about your story, Joe, and just going right from the beginning, I would love to hear how you transitioned from being in video and acting to how yoga came into your life and how you chose that as your path moving forward. And I know it's only one of the paths, but if you could speak to that first.
Well, Lauren, thank you for having me on Halo. This is cool to feel like you sort of spiritually have elevated the conversation already with the name of the podcast. So congratulations on this awesome title and awesome quest of your own. My quest truly began in 1997 when I took my very first yoga class in college. And it was in a wrestling room in a university with a lovely teacher. And I'll never forget the spirit that she brought to that energy in 1997. And I kind of got hooked there, but then distracted for a second and then back onto the path somewhere in the early 2000s. And then had, this thing happen, which is my lower back just didn't want to cooperate with life. I was in periodic spasms for days and would be on the floor completely unable to move for 3 to 5 days in a row. And I really began the journey there, where I just thought, well, what am I doing that's causing all of this pain? I look fit, I eat my greens, I exercise, I follow all the right rules according to what I saw the world as, and just realized that I was missing a big piece of the truth and why I was putting myself in such pain, how I'd put myself in such pain. So that journey really began in sincerity around early 2000s and motivated my inquiry into becoming a teacher. In 2007, I took this month-long teacher training in New York City in a hot July, and we sweated it out for I sat back down, literally one rotation of a sun salutation, and then we had to sit down, and the next teacher, next student, the next student. I was hooked. I just got something in me that goes, well, maybe I have a space here to share something unique. And it was so different from sitting in front of a computer with video content. So I continued to just find my way. And as I was finding my way as a teacher, I was also finding my way through my lower back pain. So the two kind of joined together so I could learn what it was that I wasn't seeing clearly.
That's a beautiful answer, Joe. And in terms of figuring that out from a physical standpoint, I'm sure as you progressed into your understanding of the ancient wisdom and teaching, that there is a lot held in the lower centers of the body. And I would love to hear your hindsight and insight into what that lower back pain would have been, whether it was in terms of like stability or attachment or ego, because I know that when we're talking briefly on think it was Instagram, you said one of your passions was the navel center. And I wondered whether that had any relation to your lower back and healing it.
Well, my lower back was on fire because I didn't know stop. I didn't know my capacity. I didn't understand the nuances of my inner world. I didn't have a language to approach it. Everything that I thought the inner world was about was through the perspective of the outer world. And so I had really no depth to that language and conversation with myself. So whenever a healer would come to me or I'd go to them, I was very limited in how I could process what they were giving me. And maybe I was given the answer 100 times during all those years of pains, but I never could really process it fully until I understood where that heat was coming from in my lower back and how much I would have to change my life, diet, exercise, thought processes, all the things that would cool my back down and really give me stability, long-term stability. And there were a lot of choices I had to make that needed to change. But the big common denominator, which I hope your listeners will take very seriously, is that the most dramatic change I made was with the breath. In terms of working with the breath in a really systematic way. And there's so much there to uncover. It's not just about knowing you're breathing. It's about having a skill set to access that potential. And in this case, it was cooling. And I did a very specific cooling practice for a year and a half. And it was constant and it was very rigorous, but it helped. And I haven't had a spasm in, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years. So it's been a long time since I can remember having a serious spasm, and it's a good thing to have in your background, right? In your rear view mirror.
Totally. And in that way, I think it's such a beautiful analogy of how that situation came to be, like how you said you were looking to the external world, but it's almost how you trained yourself with being in video and being with the camera. It's like you're trained to look outward, and it's so much easier to analyze and objectify what we're seeing away from us. And then when something hits us and it's so visceral, your body put you into a state of like there was no other way but to go internal. And that to me is really the definition of yoga, because I know that there's so many different terminologies that get thrown around there, and you can say yoga and someone's like, oh, that stuff or that woo woo, and it's like it's actually about connecting to yourself and knowing who you are as a person, so that your true essence can really radiate out. And it sounds like you've really taken that journey super seriously, and I love that. I would love to talk to you much more in depth about your practice and what particular practice that was. But for other people who are listening and heard all the stuff about the breath, I would encourage you looking up either Joe Somodi or looking into techniques like ParaYoga, because there's a lot of teaching that goes on that doesn't have a strategy or a method behind it as to why we're actually practicing. And that's really why I fell in love with ParaYoga, is that there's the ancient wisdom as well as the practicality of it. So I would love to hear a little bit about the trainings of ParaYoga that you've done and why in particular you resonated with Rod Stryker.
He's very grounded in his approach to the teachings. He's very practical. He understands the students who are seeking his guidance. And he's adapted quite a complex and often inaccessible language of techniques and knowledge, and he's made it very accessible. And you learn through years of being with one teacher how much you have to ask of yourself over and over again, kind of the same questions, the same inquiry, to deepen your understanding of something so simple as sun, moon, fire, right? There's a very beautiful practice that gives you a sense of the depth of our ParaYoga knowledge and database. And I've heard him teach that teaching many times. And every time I hear him, it's more refined, it's more clear. As if the last time wasn't as clear, this one is even better. It seems like it's even more eloquent. And that tells you something about his studentship, how much he values his practice, and how much he really wants to embody that so it's clearly laid out to each student. And I think that's a really special lesson for your viewers, whatever they're doing in their life. It's this constant level of inquiry. And it's a really loving, compassionate inquiry that you continue to kind of churn in you as you ask questions and more of yourself to figure out, what is all this? What does it really mean? Not taking anything at surface level. But to kind of piggyback off what you were saying earlier, what we have here is a deep emptiness in the inner world. And the conversation needs to be more about why the inner world is starving for our attention. How much have we given to the outer world on a day-to-day basis so the inner world's not listened to? Because there's signs and signals all the time, and yet we're not given any kind of way to communicate with those signs and signals. So we have a cultural and societal issue. Pandemic might have brought some of that to the surface, where the inner world is not seen and not known and is so mysterious and so dark that we just assume it's not important. We just assume it has very little value. And these assumptions are highly incorrect because they're creating such high levels of dysfunction. So we need to ask ourselves, why don't we value the inner world? Why can't I go a little bit deeper? Why can't I ask more questions of my inner world? And if we do that, if we begin to have that conversation in schools, at home, at work, I guarantee you that that level of language and understanding won't be mysterious anymore. It will become common day. And we don't have to label it yoga. We don't have to label it mindfulness. We don't have to label it anything. It's just our inner world. And then we can start to really begin to be honest with ourselves and share the suffering and pain that we all have, as well as the joys and the happiness that we all have.
Just so well said, Joe. And the fact that you said it doesn't have to be called yoga is like, that speaks to me hugely, because people, you know how people go, oh, I'm not creative and I'm not this. And I'll be like, well, what do you do here? Or like, do you like gardening or something? It's like, that's creative. And it's just we get so limited by the English language, I guess, where, you know, we're talking on what's called a computer, but somebody else could have labeled that a dog and we would call it the same thing. And it actually misses out the whole essence of what yoga is, or exercise is, or the meaning of life is. We're trying to put words and pretty language around it, but it's, yeah, I don't know. That really spoke true to me. And I'm sure that people listening is like, no, yoga's still stretching or exercise, and that's totally okay for them to think that and to be on wherever they are on their path. But I'm definitely on the same page as you of like trying to spread that message or language from a really young age to particularly children, where if we're talking to them about these things of getting comfortable with asking the bigger questions or figuring themselves out, that can be the teachings of yoga, but it doesn't have to be a yoga class as such. And I think that is just such an incredible insight that you spoke to. So thank you for that. My other, I don't know whether to unravel this one or not, because it's probably quite a big one. And there's a lot of taboo around the word tantra, and I have such a different, understanding of it now, having trained with Rod. And prior to having his mentorship and teaching, I probably would have fit into the group of like tantra is XYZ and would have thought all sorts of things about it. But I wondered if you could just quickly sum up what tantra means to you. And yeah.
It's like asking, what is life?
Well, see you later. This is going to go well over an hour.
I would just like to say to your viewers that this is a practice that wants you to find the fulfillment and freedom that we all deserve. Tantra assumes that we come into this world with some obstacles, with some barriers. And then it also assumes that you're willing to look at those barriers and overcome them. Tantra has some interesting definitions. One meaning of Tantra is to weave. And I like to hold on to that one, because what it is of weaving is reweaving the fabric of our body and mind as it was in its most pure state, its most connected state to nature. And when we are harmonized with nature, we're happy. And we can find our purpose and fulfillment when we're in that state. So a lot of what Tantra is teaching us, a full, complete experience of Tantra, meaning from beginning, middle, and end, everybody can find their way in Tantra yoga, find a technique, find practices, find tools that allows them to move inward to get them to where they need to go, because we're all kind of going in the same place, same direction, same goal, is that we can trust that technology to meet us where we are. And that's another definition of Tantra, technology. And we can trust the science of yoga and its depth to guide us where we need to go, and ultimately give us what we need in that moment, to let go of the obstacles, to let go of the barriers, what they may be, and feel a little lighter, feel a little bit more connected to something bigger than ourselves. And I think that's where Tantra should begin for all of us, is that there's a potential inside of us, and Tantra is a complete path for all people to get to where they want to go. So we can approach this conversation in a multitude of different ways, which is what Tantra means when it means weave. It means let's just weave in different types of techniques from all sorts of sources, outer world sources, inner world sources, and just see where it takes you. Have that exploratory mindset. And that's really what the seekers, sages, the rishis wanted. Back in the day, when you talk about Patanjali and Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Granth Samhita and the Bhagavad Gita, this is what they all wanted, to be seekers and to research and investigate and be scientists to our own inner world. And that's the conversation we need to be having with ourselves, because the more you delay that conversation, the less you'll know about yourself. And the truth is, we need so much to find ourselves, because we've created so many barriers. We need to release a lot of the tension points, mental tension points, emotional tension points, physical tension points, to get to where we need to go. And that's the guidance of Tantra.
It sounds like it speaks really true to something that I read in one of your titles. Is it the Lifestyle Concierge? Is that
okay? Yes.
I just
that's something I do for clients.
Well, I saw that, and I just thought it was like a nice way of explaining, in a sense, of what you do and how you weave different practices in, of like taking people on an adventure, essentially. Like, yeah, there's going to be obstacles in any story. Like, to any good story, there's a villain, or there's, all the ups and downs. And so that I really love your explanation of such a realistic approach to Tantra, and one that I one that I share, but probably couldn't speak as eloquently as you just as of yet. So I appreciate that. And yeah, would you describe your the role as like the lifestyle concierge as something that is almost a tantric practice of where you're weaving in a whole heap of different methodologies to help guide someone from where they are now to where they want to be? Or is that completely off?
Yeah, you've summarized it well. And it's really about getting everybody to start to talk to their inner world, rather than feeling like it's a heap of wisdom everybody needs to learn, or it's a heap of technology that people need to learn. I really approach it in terms of, well, what's the entry point? What is it that how do we get in there and start to talk to our body and our mind? How do we start to have a productive conversation, a loving, kind conversation with ourselves, so we can begin to kind of feel and sense and know what it's giving us? And yes, there's definitely some things to learn about the inner world in terms of dialogue, in terms of technology, in terms of vocabulary. But the big source is just, how do I get in to start to feel those things and then know that they're real? Because nobody wants to feel like we're going to some mystical place or some far off land inside our body and mind. We want to feel like we're still kind of holding on to the outer world a little bit and still kind of going in and feeling our bodies, not letting go of our body quite yet, but just keep breathing and relaxing. Okay, I'm still there. I can still feel my body. It's okay. And then as I relax more, you realize that there's something there beyond the body. And then you realize that, oh, okay, maybe that's actually where I need to be. So you rest there more comfortably, more effortlessly. So I'm all about just trying to get that dialogue to happen. A lot of it is just getting my clients to talk to me like they're talking to their inner world. And that's not any kind of self-therapy. It's just us having a conversation that really gets their inner world churning for them, so that they can feel the present reality of what that is. And then we use practice to navigate, to calm, to kind of coalesce and kind of shape things, so that, and meeting them where they are, right? So maybe they like to do relaxation. So heck, let's do some relaxation. That's a way in. Maybe they love to breathe. Wonderful, let's do that. Maybe they don't want to do any of that and they just want to talk. So let's talk. So we just try to figure out what it is. But I will emphasize, Lauren, that practice is at the cornerstone of all this. If you don't practice, you don't talk to your inner world. You're kind of pretending a little bit. So you need a home practice. And that's one of those journeys we all need to make. Once you get your home practice, your regular ritualistic inner world experience going, now we're revving our engines. Now we're going to get something going.
Yes, I completely agree. My world changed when I transitioned from a studio practice to a home practice. And that really changed when I started training with Rod. And so fortunate that a lot of his early trainings are on his website as well, to be able to access digitally. And fortunately, where I was living, I happened to come across another teacher when I was living in Tasmania who was teaching ParaYoga. So that's pretty rare. But when you were speaking about the inner world, I was thinking about this analogy before, and I so much think of our body as like, it's this plumbing system. It's this unglorified thing in the internal world. We don't see it, but if we don't look after it, it will tell us and a pipe will burst. But if everything's flowing, we don't think about it. And I think it goes to show when your practice is working is when you're not thinking about your suffering or your pains and your obstacles. It's like the channels in the body are open, the water's flowing, and it doesn't mean neglecting your practice at all, but it just means that there is like an alignment of all of the pipes, so to speak, that you don't, yeah.
And that's the prana. Now we can't stop the conversation and not talk about prana and energy and life force, because when the plumbing is starting to work, that means you're moving energy, you're moving something positive inside of you. And hey, you're digesting better, assimilating better, both mental, digestive experiences. And that's what starts to get you excited. Now the fire's churning, and now we can get more into our inner world. Of course, when we're in pain, when I had my lower back pain, I was surviving, not thriving. I was trying to find answers, and fair enough, I had to take that journey. Once you get stable, steady, clear, calm, collected, now you can start to move into the refinement of all that. And we all take it in our own pace.
We do, definitely. As for your teachers, Rod Stryker being one of your mentors and teachers, who else would you consider would be up there for people that you look to as role models or whose trainings you take? It doesn't have to be in yoga, it could be in some other field that you're also a part of.
Well, that's an excellent question. To be honest, I have a team of people looking out for me. I have a committee of teachers, a sangha of teachers, and they all really do shed a lot of light. And I just want to share with your viewers that you must have a circle of very inspiring people, not just your friends. That's great, necessary, but these are people who really light you up, and they are on the journey, and they're kind of, they're up, they're ascending, and you're sort of, I see you, I'm going to come up there soon. I just need to do a few things. But so I have a great assembly of knowledgeable teachers from a lot of walks of life, who I constantly seek guidance from. No one really to point out today, but really to say that they're all connected to the lineage in some way, or they're connected to something spiritual in some way. They are connected to a higher divine essence, and that really helps guide me. And I think we just all need to make sure we have those seekers and beings in our life that remind us of the bigger picture and the bigger potential.
Yeah, it's important to definitely have someone we're aspiring to, and when we have that, we're always looking as to how we can like expand ourselves to grow into the qualities that they have. And excuse me, when we always think we're at the bottom of the rung, it's like where I see you, it's like you're above where I want to be. And that's why, I've reached out to connect with you, but then there'll be someone who's like, well, Lauren's much further ahead, and we're all at different stages, and we have to, it's important to have a combination of both where we're looking up, but we're also the teacher and the leader as well. So I think it's a special gift to have in life, or just to connect with people in general. I think it's pretty remarkable. I think I might leave the Agnisara question for another time. And I feel like we could probably talk about that for quite a length of time. But what I might do is just finish up with a few rapid fire questions, which have not turned out to be rapid fire in the past.
Good intentions. Yes.
Intentions. We start out there, and they'll just be a little bit random, and we'll see how we go. Are you a dessert before dinner kind of guy, or dinner before dessert?
Dinner before dessert.
Mm-hmm. What was your first job?
I was a bag boy for a golf country club,
Wow.
which meant I cleaned golf clubs.
Yes. That's brilliant. Can't even speak. Top recommended book, podcast, movie, or series?
There's a wonderful Netflix series called Sex Education.
Oh, okay. I've seen that come up.
It's brilliantly acted by some very young talent. Intriguing story. Highly recommend it.
Great. I was not expecting that, and I love it. What is something no one or very little people know about you, Joe, that you're willing to share, obviously?
I'm adopted.
Wow.
At 1 month old, I was adopted.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I have so many more questions about that. If you had to choose, we'll keep going with these quick fire. If you had to choose between keeping your smell or your sight, what would it be and why?
Sight, because I would really miss it, quite frankly. You can still travel the world with your sight in a fairly convenient way and be able to take in a lot of a lot of the world. And there's so much beauty out there. There's so much color, there's so much variety. I'd want to make sure I saw that. I'm answering that probably because it's the one thing I fear losing.
I was thinking the same thing.
So
I'm just like, imagine how your other senses would expand without your sight, because it's so strong in most of us. It would be so interesting. But good answer. How much sleep do you aim for each night? And do you have a methodology behind that?
7 hours is ideal for my body type and my dosha, which is pitta.
Yep.
I take about 30 minutes prior to going to bed, and I have a little bit of a ritual where I wash my face, maybe drink a little water, maybe neti cleanse one more time, obviously brush my teeth and kind of just get ready and prepare. And I physically get into bed before I'm tired. And that way I'm starting to kind of move the routine away from other things and into the mindset of sleep. Those are pretty basic things. Windows open, obviously, cool air is flowing in, all that. And but it's a ritual for sure. And I will share with your listener viewers that it gets a little harder as you get older. I think that's the truth. There's something about the consciousness about sleep and just making sure you get into good habits and routines. And some of those things are easily lost as you get older. So, and that's just because of life cycles and, people have babies and new jobs and all that, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the sooner you can get into reliable habits of sleep, oh, so much the better.
Totally. And added to that as well, it's like when we have a good sleep routine, we can start to structure our eating habits a little bit earlier as well, which I know is something that's helped me, is eating earlier. So my body's not using my sleep time as digest time. And you get a much deeper sleep that way as well. Where's your ultimate happy place, Joe?
Yeah, we're in it. We're in it.
Oh.
Teaching, sharing, connecting with like-minded people, just helping the world in real positive ways. After I speak to you, I'm going to go off onto the campaign trail. I have a friend who is running for city council here locally in our town, and I want to canvass for him. And all these things are my happy place. When I'm being creative, I'm happy. So I'm pretty fortunate person to be pretty much in my happy place most of the time.
I feel like you're somebody who constructs that. You have the perspective of being able to see each moment as a blessing, which is it's a beautiful quality. What is a superpower that you've always wanted, and do you think you have it, or is it something that is like completely out of this world?
I would love to see what other people are thinking. I think it would be fascinating and be able to be much more intuitive, much more productive conversations if we could actually see other thoughts from people. But yeah, that would be fun, especially as a teacher, because I'm always constantly being with students and trying to figure out what they are thinking. I have some sense of intuition around that. I think you get that as you go further on into your inner world, but not quite to the depth that I would like to be able to really read the situation. There are people out there, though, I think, that can really do quite a bit with that. They know kind of people's sensibilities very quickly.
It's all about paying attention, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Is there a place you haven't traveled to that you would like to travel to?
Well, Australia is one of them.
Come say hey.
Hey, Spain, Buenos Aires, I haven't been to. I kind of put a halt on travel, international travel. So there's a lot of long, Greece, a lot of countries I really want to get to soon, soon as we can get back on the plane. So, yep, that's an important part of life too. And I've been a little bit congested with work lately over the last kind of half a dozen years. So I'm ready to get back out there and start to see the world again.
What's your ancestry, Joe? You have such beautiful skin and features. I'm wondering whether like one of those exotic countries are where you want to visit.
No,
You're just
no,
beautiful.
I'm Western European, pretty boring. Not saying Western Europeans are boring, just I don't find it quite as intriguing as far as heritage goes. And remember, I'm adopted, so I did do 23andMe just to figure out what all that was about. My Somodi name is Hungarian, but I don't have any connection to such a lineage. So, you kind of dig into your own background to see how it all works. I'm thankful for 23andMe.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how we can there's so much out there now. I mean, to access a whole range of information, we basically have it at our fingertips, don't we?
Yes, we do.
2 more questions. What is your latest favorite or most used word that you find yourself saying?
I don't know. You stumped me on that one.
Gotcha.
I don't know if I have a word that I constantly use. You'd have to ask my husband. He probably would know better.
Yeah, I feel like they would. And it's just like,
yeah,
cool. We'll have to get him on here at some point. Do you have a memorable teaching moment that's really stuck out to you over the years, like in terms of it being the student having an aha moment, a light bulb moment, or you just going, that was the best class ever, or best teaching moment?
I think anytime a student has a breakthrough, it's really quite special. And because I work with so many students one-on-one, that, I'm not saying it happens every day, but it happens fairly often. And I can see momentum shifting inside of them. That's always a wonderful feeling as a teacher, to know that they've worked hard enough there. Me not being in the picture as much, and I'm just somebody as a touchstone, and every once in a while we talk. They really do all the work, and I just kind of suggest and guide and offer ideas and insight that might help them. So that's really the main thing I think of when I think about teaching. I think every time you're out there in the public in the space of teaching, it's really a journey unto itself. I've never found it to be banal or any kind of like predictability. It is always exciting. You're live on stage, everybody. And although it may not be being filmed, it's still live on stage, and you don't know what's going to come at you. You don't know what you're going to say. And here you go. Let's just see how it all unfolds. And I've surprised myself over the years as it goes. You just don't realize that you're actually in that moment, and it's all happening just so beautifully. So teaching, if you're truly connected to it, is kind of a gift, constantly giving back to you over and over again.
So beautifully put. Now, when is your book going to be out? Where are you at with writing that?
So the journey with writing started a year and a half ago when I really wanted to tell my lower back story. And I, in earnest, began in 2020 writing that story down very specifically. But in the midst of that journey, writing hundreds of pages, really, I realized that I just wasn't as excited to tell that story anymore. It wasn't really filling me up, and I was getting a little frustrated by the lack of kind of excitement around the writing journey. I turned the corner early this year, and I said, fiction might be the better way. And I started playing with scenarios and looking at opportunities. And I just find it is an open market right now, an open opportunity that nobody's writing thrillers that really weave in some of the deeper teachings of yoga. And I know that just sounds like thriller and yoga. How does that work together? So it's kind of a conundrum there, but you have medical thrillers and you have historical thrillers and you have legal thrillers. So we're just going to tap into the millions of folks like yourself who love to read / love yoga and see if we can impart some of this energy around yoga and the teachings. I will tell your viewers, listeners, that my stories will take place in the future. So the future meaning aspirational, in the sense that a new wave of yoga has come forward and people now are seeing yoga in a different light in this new future space. And from there, we can begin to have a real story start to unfold.
I'm so excited for when it comes out. I will have it first on my ordering list. And it's again, like what we were speaking to earlier, how you were saying, it's finding a way in to just acknowledge where someone's at. Like someone who picks up a thriller might have, whatever reason they're picking that up for, but to have it impart all of this wisdom, that's, it's a very clever way of writing a book and appealing to a different market. So I think it's just going to be absolutely awesome, and I can't wait for that to arrive in my letterbox.
Well, I'm just as excited myself.
Yay.
To see what happens. So it's a fun journey. Believe me, I love being creative, and it's a gift to sit down and write what you love about.
Totally. So to wrap this up, Joe, where can people find you? What is the best way that they can get in contact with you or find your teachings, whether it's online or in person?
2020 Yoga, so 2020yoga.com. And I host a Sunday Sangha, not that in America, it's 8 a.m. in the morning in America, in the mountain time. But we do a live sort of kind of get together every Sunday at 8 o'clock in the morning in mountain time. And that's a chance to kind of tap in and see what it's all about. And I put those up on YouTube. So if that's time is inappropriate and inconvenient, then just tap into YouTube and find those practices there. But really just guiding people in meditation, deep breathing, and doing a little self-reflection around the practice. And, I'm always open for more one-on-ones, more privates. And when we get out there in the real world again, face-to-face, body-to-body, we'll be
I look forward to having more of these kinds of chats with you. And I'm actually going to look more. Up? We did freeze up a little bit, but that's okay. I was probably just smiling and staring at you.
Oh.
But yeah, I do want to
lovely
look
smile. It's all good.
I want to look more into the classes that you offer and to keep people like yourself around, and like within that team that we speak about, where I resonated with you for a reason. And even though I might not have known that at the time, even now, just having connected with you in person, it's that proximity is power kind of thing, where I'm just like, I just want to know more of what you do. I love you as a person, but I also I would trust your teachings as well. So I know that you're just, a few steps above me in what you've done for teacher training. And I can always deal with more people who can impart wisdom in a really practical way for such complex teachings at times. So Thank you for your time today, Joe. I appreciate you getting back to me and just jumping out and doing this. It inspires me, and it makes my heart smile and my whole body smile. It's amazing.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for thinking of me, and I thank your listeners for listening. And it's such a great opportunity to be able to reach out and be able to connect with you like this. It's a unique moment in time, and I really do cherish it.
It is, absolutely. I am going to cut this off, but I will just say goodbye to you before we actually end the call.